Okay. All right. So everybody online hopefully can still hear me. Hi, Lindsay. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hi. So I'm Tim Hall, manager of the Yavapai College Prescott Art Gallery here. This is the last one of the semester in our series of art talks on Wednesday nights. And it was about a year ago, this month or next month, Dale Odell had one of the most successful, exciting shows that we've had in this gallery for a long time of his photos of rock art throughout the Southwest. Really popular. We had a lot of people. And since then, he's been a good friend of the gallery. So I thought he would be a perfect person to judge our Spring Juried Student show, which he did. And you're seeing the results of that around you. It's a fantastic show. Beautifully curated, beautifully hung, if you don't mind me saying. And then we got to talking and I said, Dale, come on in. Let's do a talk about how you chose and you know what it's like to be a professional artist. And let's help some of our emerging artists with some good advice. So that's what we have here tonight. It's not going to be a really long talk, but I think it's going to be very interesting and very edifying for all of us. So thanks for coming. We will pick up again probably in June or July with another talk, and then we'll have several talks associated with the Plein Air Festival in July and August. So keep looking out for that.
Where do we look?
Well, we can get your number and put you on our mailing list and you will find out everything, okay? Yeah, so without anything else for me to say, go ahead, Dale Odell. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. It's always nice to come back to Yavapai College. It's always, you guys do such a great job. It's always great working with you and Rhonda, and you got a great space over here. And so when Tim asked me to judge this thing, I immediately said yes. And then I thought about the ramifications of being called a judge. I don't like judging other people's stuff, really. But that's where we're at in the arts in America, on Earth. And so I just have a few slides, just kind of underscore what I'm talking about. And I have notes, which I will immediately ignore.
We just started, no worries.
Just started, haven't anything.
Come on, oh, thanks for coming. We just started.
I'll have to leave a teeny bit early, but I just.
That's okay.
Okay, thanks.
Hopefully we'll have a little bit of a dialogue about art after I conclude this. But so, yeah, I'm the judge, and let me start with this point, which is kind of counterintuitive or something that's been judged. But in my opinion, art is not a competition. I don't think we should be competitors. I think we should be comrades. But unfortunately, our whole species is descended from predators. And we tend to compete and to form a hierarchy and choose who is bigger, better, badder than the other guy. And that filters down to the art world, and we haven't yet figured out a better model for it. So we have art competitions and photo contests and that sort of thing. And so that's where we're at. I don't think there should be competitions, even juried shows, because art really can't be quantified. Everything you see was selected by me, but I'm just one guy with an opinion. And so if you got in this show, congratulations. Don't feel too good about yourself, because you could submit this to another exhibition and not get in at all. You know, conversely, if you did not get in this exhibition, you can submit to the next one and win the best in show. It's just one person's opinion. And that's the weird thing, because like in baseball, the guy hits the ball over the fence, it's a home run, everybody sees it, everybody agrees, there's not really an argument about it. In football, crosses the line in the end zone and touchdown, you know. In art, it's a little fuzzier, a little harder to get a hold of. And so I got a couple of things that I have read over the years I wanted to share with you. I have two quotes. One of them is from this guy, Austin Kleon, who's a art marketing guy. And this is from a book called Show Your Work. And as far as art marketing books go, if you're a student, buy one, read it, throw it away, be done with it, they're all the same. Most of the information is one size fits all. But I ran across this quote about all it takes to uncover hidden gems is a clear eye and open mind and willingness to search for inspiration in places other people aren't willing or able to go. And that's, I think, a real important thought, because I hear a lot of people, they're intimidated by art galleries and museums, or they walk out of the gallery scratching their head going, I don't get it. The arts throughout history has really hobbled itself, I believe, because of elitism. There's a lot of elitism in the arts. And I think if we get past that, you end up with a more open mind. And another thing is, if you've been in the arts a long time, you tend to get cynical, you tend to start feeling like you've seen everything. Your eyes lose that freshness that we have when we're young. And if you can hang on to that, you'll have a better experience at the gallery, you'll have a better experience at the museum. And so, always be willing and always have an open mind when you're in the gallery and the museum, because there is a reason all this stuff is on the wall. And anybody who walks out and doesn't have a good experience or scratches their head thinking they don't get it, has really just not given it the time it needed to really read the art and perceive it. And so always be willing. The second quote is from our old friend Tom Wolfe. You all remember him, The Right Stuff. And he wrote this little tiny book called The Painted Word way back in '75, before he wrote his famous novels. And he said, if a work of art or new style disturbed you, it was probably good. If you hated it, it was probably great. And there's a lot of truth to that, because we tend to reject or dislike new things that we don't really have a frame of reference for. A good example of what's going on right now is this new artificial intelligence. We've all kind of been hearing about this on the news in the last few months. And I talked to a lot of artists and writers, and they're very afraid of it right now. And things that are new tend to be feared. They tend to be marginalized until it's been around long enough for a large enough group of people to develop a comfort level with it. And then we accept it, and then the next thing you know, we use it, and ultimately we make money off of it, I guess. But if you're walking through the gallery and you see something that really bugs you, or you don't like, go back to it. Walk away, go look at something else, and then come back, or maybe come back to the gallery at another time. You may find that you just don't have a handle on it. And if you give it a little bit more time and contemplation and a little more mental energy, you'll see things that perhaps you missed because you were so overwhelmed by the newness of the whole thing. And so the bottom line is just always be open-minded. And I try to do that when I judge other people's work. And so I want to talk about some questions that I ask myself when I go to galleries. And the first series of questions I ask myself when I look at artwork is it interesting or compelling? Does it show me the subject in a new way? And is it original, and is it creative? And those are like basic things I look for. And in my own exhibitions, especially early on, I was really kind of taken aback as a young artist when people would come up to me at my own shows and say, wow, that's really creative. And my thought would be, isn't that the whole reason the gallery exists, for the creative people to show their creations? But what they were referencing were artworks that they'd already seen before. You can imagine like an Audubon Society illustration of a bird. All right, you've got an artist whose technique is wonderful. They're showing you what that bird looks like, but they're not showing you any more. They're showing you what if you could see the thing in nature, it would look like. Whereas if Rene Magritte, the great Belgian surrealist, got a hold of that bird would look like something totally different. And so that's why where the creative aspect. Did you see something that you didn't see before? And the wonderful thing about art, in my view, is it shows me the world through somebody else's eyes. It shows me things in a way I don't perceive them. And I welcome that because I want to learn as much as I can. And if I can learn about somebody's art, I learn a little bit about them. And I learn about the broader subject matter in general. And so I look for things that are interesting, that are compelling, that catch my eye, things that go above and beyond what I would term visual muzak. You know, it's not wallpaper, it is something to be paid attention to. And so I look for things that are shown to me in a new way. And then I wonder how that artwork would fare in an art class critique or what grade it would get. That's pretty straightforward, but when I look at art in the museums and galleries, I wonder about when the artist first did it and they put it up for their peers to look at what that discussion was like. And that's the discussion I hope to overhear in the gallery. And that's the one I have in my mind when I'm going through all these artworks and trying to pick the ones that are going to be in the show and the ones I have to decline. Then finally, I ask myself, do I want to possess this? Do I like it so much that I would exchange actual money for it? And that's really the Western marketplace point of view. If you like something so much that you'll trade hard-earned money for it, it must be good, or it must speak to you, or it must bring something to you that you otherwise wouldn't have. And so I always ask myself, would I buy it? And of course, if I had $40 million, I would buy a lot of art because it's all in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And finally, the last question, and this is mainly aimed at artists, is when you look at somebody else's art, do you wish you'd done it? And when I have that feeling, then I know I'm looking at something really good, really compelling, really interesting. And I look at it and go, damn, I wish I thought of that. Short little story before I go on to the next thing is I ran into an old friend a number of years ago out in Palm Springs. And she had been a student of mine in the 1980s. And so like 25, 30 years had gone by and we reconnected and we went out to dinner and we're in the restaurant and I started asking her about her current work. And of course, we ended up sitting in the restaurant looking at her Instagram feed, which seems to be everybody's portfolio nowadays. And I looked at her work and my first thought was that I was almost angry. I felt kind of sad. And that was all on me. That was my problem because what I saw in her work was that she had gone completely beyond anything I had taught her back in the 80s. She had left the mat. And once I got that in my head, I started feeling good because that meant to me I had succeeded as a teacher. She had exceeded her instructor. Her output was her output was more than my output to her had been. And so I looked at her stuff and it was like, it wasn't even like I wished I had done it. I wished I had had that thought. It was so far beyond anything that we had done in 1984. And so it's important to be inspired by others. And now we have the internet. And I don't know about you guys, but I, from time to time, spend time surfing and Googling other artworks. And I look at what everybody's doing because the internet is the ultimate democratizing force in art. You don't have to have a gallery. You don't have to have anything. You just need to put things on a website or build a website, and the whole world has access to your stuff. And so I go back and forth when I look at work online. It's two horrible extremes. One of them is, damn, I'm good. And the other extreme is, damn, I'm awful. You know, I don't like anything that I did, you know, and I see this amazing work online. And so while it's good to view others' works from time to time, it's also good to step away and avoid that, what I call unconscious plagiarism that we all kind of do sometimes. You saw something a year ago, it stuck in your head. Now you're working on a piece and then out it comes. And you forgot what the source was and you think it's yours, but really you borrowed a concept or an idea from an artist way back. And that's all fine as well, and well, so long as you don't imitate them. And that's where we're going next, because I've discovered in my nearly 50 years in the business that there's 3 stages of an artist's evolution that I've noticed. The first one is imitation. And that is where the artist says, I'm going to make an Ansel Adams photograph, I'm going to make a Picasso painting. And that's a great place to practice technique, but it's not a great place to stay because you're not doing anything original. You're not putting any of yourself into your artwork. The next step is emulation. And that's where the artist says, I will make a photograph that looks like an Ansel Adams picture. I will make a painting that looks like a Picasso. And this is where the majority of artists stay. It's safe, it's comfortable. And I used to get this question. I work both in the fine arts and in commercial photography. My background's photography. And early on, I used to get stumped routinely by this question that the art director, that the ad agencies would ask me. And it's stupid because I shouldn't be stumped by this, but they would say, what kind of a photographer are you? Like, well, I'm here jonesing for a job. I'd like to say I'm a good one, you know, but what they meant was, are you a portraitist? Are you a still life shooter? Are you a landscape photographer? Because that allows them to put you in a category, in a pigeonhole. It's like, oh, Dale is a still life shooter. So when I get a still life, maybe I'll think of him and call him up and give him that assignment. And so when you emulate, you'll always be compared to somebody else. Now, the third step in this process is innovation. I will make something I have never seen before. And this requires a lot of hard work, and it scares the shit out of the audience because we all relate to things we already know. And if we see something that is so unique and so original that we don't have a frame of reference for it, kind of goes back to that Tom Wolfe thing. We don't like it. We don't know what it is. And so it's really, really hard to do this, but after you have worked on your technique and imitated other greats that came before you, after you took what they did and made something that looks like them, then you need to throw away the Legos and make your own Legos and build your own thing. And maybe somebody will imitate you in the next generation. So anyway, these are the things that I've noticed from bouncing around the business for a really long time. Now I want to talk a little bit about the jurying process that I went through. Now this was all done online. When I first started submitting to jury shows, we mailed out slides. Anybody remember that? Yeah. Now we upload a JPEG, and this is all done online. As a photographer, I've noticed a phenomenon that I call, gee, your pictures look better on my phone. Because we're used to looking things at on small tablet and phone screens. And sometimes, especially in photography, they look really good small, but they don't hold up big. And so I was a little reticent about some of the choices I made based on what I was seeing on a 72 DPI backlit screen versus the thing itself when it came into the gallery. And I can tell you the piece over here, the lady with the shrimp on her head, another shrimp on the Barbie, that I went back and forth on that because the photograph, it wasn't a bad photo, but it could have been a little bit better. And I went back and forth on it because I couldn't tell if the artist's technique was good. I knew the concept was good, the idea was good. I chuckled when I saw it, and then especially when I read the title, but I wasn't sure if the guy could paint. And I took a chance and I selected for the show. And when I came in to preview the show, it's like one of the first pieces I went to. It was like, The guy can paint, it's good, okay. But there is a difference between viewing things online and viewing the thing itself. And I would point out that if you are a art consumer, and you're going to buy art online, make sure that there's a good return policy, because what you see on Etsy or wherever, or on Saatchi or whatever, it might not hold up to, or it might, what you get might not hold up to what you saw. And so this is the first time I've judged one of these things without sitting in a conference room with a Kodak slide projector. This is the first online one that I did. So the first round, I spent a weekend. I spent all day Saturday and the better part of a Sunday doing this because I take the process seriously. I found that the people I've met in the business that are the most aggressive, the most negative, the most opinionated, tend to be the ones that are the most insecure. I don't want to be that guy. I want to be the guy who, even though I don't know anything about your subject or your technique, can appreciate what you give and select that for the exhibition. And so in the first round I go through, it's very, very loose. It's got to really not catch my eye, or it has to be aggressively uninteresting or something for me to decline it in the first round. And then I take a break. And it's very important to take a break, get away from it. So I spent a few hours going through it. I made my selections, I made some notes. I reset the program back to the first one. And then I went out and I worked on my motorcycle for a while and used a different part of my brain. And when I came back to it, my eyes were a little bit more fresh. And I was thinking with a different part of my brain. And so when I went for the second round, I went through everything again. And the second time around was tighter. I was a little more selective. I was a little more critical, but the main thing I was looking for was the artist's vision at that point. First round, it's like, are you an artist? Can you paint? Can you draw? Whatever. Second round is, okay, I've established that you can draw or paint, sculpt, whatever. Do you have something to say? And so I really look for that. Now I'm really trying to get inside the artist's head, and I'm looking for those works that show me the world in a way that otherwise I don't see it. I do that, I edit some out, and then I take another break. So I go off and I do something, and then when I come back for the third round, it's even tighter, I'm more critical. And at this point, I'm looking for the really outstanding stuff. I'm looking for the compelling pieces. I'm looking for the really original ones. And then when I finish that, I'm done for the day. I'm going to come back to it the next day. But I can't stress how important it is. And this applies to your own work. If you're working on a piece, a lot of folks, I know I get to a point and I can't resolve it any further. So as a digital artist, I don't have any commitment. I don't have paint to dry or anything like that. So I can literally say, save as, shut off the computer and walk away. And I find that a lot of times at the end of the day, I will have done a piece to a certain point, maybe to the 75, 80, 80% point. I'll make a little inkjet print and I'm done for the day, but I'll spend on my evening having dinner, have a drink, or whatever. And I'll be looking at that inkjet and I'll have a Sharpie and I'll be marking that up because that will serve as my starting point for the next day. And then when I go to the computer the next day, I look at that image, I've got fresh eyes. The famous physicist Richard Feynman, you may have heard of, Nobel Prize winner, worked on the Manhattan Project. Well, anyway, when he was teaching physics, his PhD students would come to him with whatever they're going to do their dissertations on, and he would approve them, and then he would tell them, now go take a week off. And these students were like, Dr. Feynman, are you crazy? I got to get to work on my dissertation. He would say, no, walk away, don't even think about it, go play tennis, do something else for a week. And the ones that actually did that usually had an epiphany or a discovery about their project while they were taking time off. There's a famous physicist who is one of the leaders in quantum physics, who recently retired from the University of Oregon. His name is Dr. Amit Goswami. And he wrote a wonderful book called Quantum Creativity. Highly recommended if you're interested in learning about the nature of creativity, because nobody's figured this out yet. But I think that Dr. Goswami's onto something. He talked about Feynman and his technique of taking a break. And Goswami coined the term unconscious processing. So when we're not thinking about a thing, we're still thinking about a thing. It's just not up here, it's back here. And he discovered the same thing with his students. When they took a little step away from it, when they came back, they were better at it. And that's totally applies to art. I had 136 entries. The first round, I whittled it down to 110. Not a lot. I didn't throw a lot out. When I came back to it the second time, I cut it down to 81. And the third time, I cut it down to 71. Now, Tim had given me a range of numbers to try to hit based on the size of the gallery. You know, and the last thing you want to hear in a rejection letter is, "Your stuff was great, it just didn't fit in the gallery." Like, well, thanks a lot, you know. But I was trying to get a number less than 71. However, I did get a lot of small jewelry and 3D pieces, so I knew that there was going to be space for it. So the best I could do is get it down to 71 pieces and select 11 awards from that. Just a few final thoughts about the jurying process is that I saw more 3D art for this exhibition than 2D art. That may mean something, it might not. I think it might mean something about the number of courses that were offered in the metal and wood departments than in painting, maybe. Or people were just more motivated to make three-dimensional things. I saw a lot more jewelry and metal art than I expected, less painting than I expected, and there was no photography or digital art except for that one video that would play on that monitor if it was on.
And Bernadette is a digital piece as well, for a second piece.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Now there was no category for photography.
Right.
And so.
Because we're not offering a class anymore.
Right, you offer Photoshop classes, but not
Yeah,
photography
not
per se.
photography.
One comment I'll make about that, and this is the thing that is always driven me crazy, is when people say, "Okay, artists and photographers." What the hell? I'm an artist too. I just use a different tool. You know, so to me, a painting, a photo, 2D art to 2D art, you know. It drives me crazy when we artificially create these little ghettos to push people off. Oh, he's a woodworker, you know, don't talk to him about metal, you know. It's all cool stuff. It's all human expression. It's all good. Although photography being a technical art tends to be judged against other photographs. I would like to see the day to where we just have an art show. Or maybe an all 2D art show that could include photography. For me, taking the job seriously, the process is pleasant and unpleasant because I love to see new talent. I love to see new things, but I really do feel kind of crappy when I click the button that says decline, because I'm not detached from it. I do understand that behind every picture is a person, and every person has a mind and a heart and a motivation to do this. And they were very brave to do it. They were even more brave to take it out of their studio and share it with other people who might not like it. You know, your best critic is always who? Your mom. Mom likes everything, right? Hey, mom. Mom likes it. It's the worst person to show your stuff too, because she likes everything. You'll never get anything objective out of her. But on the other hand, overly critical people can really, thanks for coming, can really mess you up, because as the juror, I want to be the guy who encourages you. I do not want to be the guy who discourages you. I remember once early on in my writing career, I got a rejection letter from a guy in a magazine that was so utterly brutal. I just wanted to go uninstall WordPerfect off of my computer. I never liked it. And you got to kind of just throw that out and let that go, because there's always those people out there. Someplace between that guy and your mom is where the best critics are. I just have 2 more slides here. If you ever get a rejection letter that says this, they're liars. It's not about your work. It's a freaking art show. What else is it about? It is about your work. You might hear an additional excuse that, oh, well, we had so many pieces that we couldn't fit them all in the gallery. It's like, well, yeah, well, apparently mine wasn't that good because mine came home. And so it is about your work. It's not about you personally. It's about your work. And so when you get a rejection, seriously, it's okay to go home and curse my name if you did not get in the show. Don't kick the dog. Don't yell at the wife or the husband. But it's okay to be pissed off with me. Get it out of your system and then get it together and submit to the next thing, because you'll probably succeed. Which brings me to the last point about feedback. You will never, ever, ever, never, never, ever, ever get a better critique of your work after you graduate. Now, I had a professor, I think it was my sophomore year, say this after one of our weekly print critiques. And I got it. I don't think the majority of my classmates actually got it. Because after I graduated and I got into the field and I was working, and that means that I was either going out to ad agencies or graphic designers and showing my portfolio and trying to get paying work, or I was going to the galleries and trying to impress a gallerist to give me an exhibition. We spent very little time talking about art. And when we did, everybody except my professor had an agenda. The guy at the ad agency, if he hires you to do this, he's putting his job on the line, basically. You got to perform. And he doesn't know you can do that. The folks at the gallery, they may have a wonderful mission statement and they might be really, really nice, but at the end of the day, they're thinking about how they are going to monetize your creative output. And so you have to kind of keep all that in mind. And while you're in school, for those of you who are students or no students who can pass this along, pay attention to your professors, because you're going to get the best critique while you're in school before you graduate. And the only time you won't is when you get a bad teacher. And there's plenty of bad teachers out there. I had classmates who graduated and went on to become bad teachers themselves. And if you find you have a professor that wants you to emulate them, or they're overly critical, they might be a little bit insecure because they never really made it out in the marketplace. So you have to keep all this in mind. And the bottom line is you got to believe in yourself, no matter what. You can't, you can put your work out there looking for acceptance, but before other people can accept it, you have to accept it yourself. You have to accept who you are, what you're doing, what you're trying to say, what you're trying to create. And if you're comfortable with that, the worst critic in the world can criticize your stuff and it's not going to bother you that much. So these are just some of the things that I think about when I look at other people's work, when I go to galleries and museums and stuff, and I will consult my notes, which I have aggressively ignored, and see if there's anything that I've missed. And, basically, I think I got it all here.
Dale, one thing I would ask you to address for the next time we're having another show in fall. What can they do to make their photos better? Would that problem that you felt like you had, would it be better if they're better photos, or is it just the fact that it's online?
It's both. It's both. Most of the photos that I saw were pretty good. Now, there's really only one lighting setup for photographing two-dimensional art. And it's actually, it was like lighting class 101 when I was in college. And it's to have your artwork directly in front of your camera with the plane of the canvas and the plane of the back of the camera parallel to one another. Because if anything's off a little bit, you get keystoning one side that's bigger than the other. The other thing is to have two lights equidistant from the camera and the artwork at a 45-degree angle from the artwork. At a 45-degree angle means that it, like a painting that's, I photograph a lot of artwork, and varnish drives me crazy. Because a painting that's varnished reflects little highlights from the raised part of the canvas threads, and you get little highlights. And you can polarize the light, you can do things, but mainly if your lights are at a 45-degree angle to one another, the reflection from one goes out of frame in one direction, and the reflection from the other light goes out of frame in the other direction, and you get a good even lighting. I know a lot of artists, they'll just go out in the shade because it's nice and even, and they'll take a picture with their phone. And the shade is usually bluish. And so if you're a painter and you don't have good photography skills, save up your paintings and then hire a photographer or go to a studio and have them photographed. The 3D artwork that I saw was all pretty well photographed, which is interesting because it's more difficult to light.
Well, I think what we've changed recently this last year is we're offering, you can bring your stuff in here and we will photograph it for you. And we're doing that for a week before the deadline.
Oh, that's
Every
great.
show.
I would, as
Yeah.
a painter, I would jump
Yeah,
all over
and
that.
Keelan Miller, she knows what she's doing.
Yeah,
So I think everyone should be doing that, because in these shows, you have to put your best foot forward, right?
you do. And you have, in photography, there was this, used to be this thing called generations. In each generation you got away from the original, you lost quality. The negative was the first generation, the print was the second generation. If you shot a copy negative of that print, that was the third generation. And so each generation lost a little bit of quality. We don't have that anymore with digital.
Right.
Except if you have to photograph a painting. Your painting is actually the first generation and your photograph would be the second generation, but we're photographing digitally nowadays. So we're really not losing any quality. If you have a good digital photograph and you submit a good, nice, sharp JPEG, the juror should have all the information that they need.
Yeah.
And the only issue I had with that one was there was a little bit of glare.
Yeah, we did photograph that.
Yeah, okay. There was a little bit of glare. And I didn't want, again, remembering that there's a person behind the artwork, I didn't want to screw the artist
Right.
and exclude them from the show because somebody took a bad picture of their artwork.
Right, but it's important that people, if you're gonna be trying to get in these shows, to know that this isn't just a stage that you can just half-ass.
No, it's part of
really
the process.
important,
Yes, it is.
Especially now, because every art show that you're gonna enter is gonna be online.
Yes, yeah,
Period.
you're not gonna be shooting any more Ektachrome slides and
Yeah.
mailing them in all.
It's just the way it is.
You're also not gonna be paying any more $10 entry fees. They're gonna be like $50.
I've always thought there's certain people and certain artworks that are not photogenic. They're unphotogenic. Yeah, there's something that just comes.
I would say that about people, but the artwork, if you light it properly, as so long as you can reproduce it within 90% of what it actually looks like, you've done your job. You have to understand that we look at a painting, we're looking at light that reflects off of a surface as opposed to looking at an image on a screen, which is transmitted light. This is always going to look more saturated and contrastier than a painting. But if you understand that you've changed mediums and you have to throw a little bit out, if your photograph is within 10% of your original, you're okay. As far as people goes, we don't even have Photoshop filters for that yet.
So how do you set up like the jewelry, the necklaces and the bracelets and the?
That is kind of individual to the piece. You're gonna, the two lighting assignments that I got in as a college photography student that drove me crazy were the shiny things, shiny silverware. We always had the silverware assignment. Control the reflections in the spoon bowl.
Oh,
And then the other was glassware. All right, with glassware, the secret to photographing anything made from glass is to light it from behind. No light from the front. All the light goes through the glass. Now, for other things, you're not going to photograph, a small piece of jewelry the same way you would photograph that cabinet, for example. But for small reflective surfaces like jewelry or even pottery, basically you want a large, broad, soft light source. We use umbrellas for that, or we use a softbox, or we'll put a diffusion material in front of our lights, which want big light. If you look at car ads on TV, you'll see like a reflection of the light itself that goes all the way from the front bumper across the door, across the trunk to the back bumper. It'll be this beautiful, smooth, unbroken reflection. That is not 6 lights the photographer set up. That is one light, literally the size of the ceiling, that's reflecting off of the shiny surface of the car to make it look that good. And so a lot of it is reflection control, and you do that by using large, soft light sources.
you're making me think of somebody I know who had to do Stonehenge at night under the stars.
Oh,
And
cool.
he created a 22-foot wooden piece to put lights on,
Wow.
to get the lights.
Oh, to
in
light.
addition, yeah.
Oh, see, today we would do that with a drone.
But
Oh,
we
yeah.
brought the drones in too.
There's some really
They
cool night
did-
photography done
That was one of,
illuminated by drone, but that's something I haven't done.
and I'm thinking about if I made, for jewelry, Jamie loves to do all of our jewelry class stuff and lapidary stuff.
Yeah, she does great
And
photographs.
she does, but
Yeah.
she has, pieces of driftwood and rock and.
Oh, as
stars
far
and-
as props and stuff.
Yeah, and that's where and then she has like 3 lights, and then she's sitting there, I don't know that she's trained. I mean, she,
Yeah.
she would love to learn.
She gets great photographs. of that
does.
Stuff, yeah.
She does.
Well,
And she's giving us some of her rocks and stuff, so we're gonna have more of those props for the next one.
Uh-huh.
We can take those photographs here too.
Great.
I photograph jewelry in small assemblage pieces routinely, and I've got samples of tile. I got from the tile shop, different textures and colors,
Mhm.
and I'll put the jewelry on top of that.
Mhm.
I've even gone down to Michael's and bought marbleized paper, use that as a backdrop.
Nice.
You can be as creative as you want to be, but you don't want to overwhelm the artwork, because your job is to photograph the artwork, not use the artwork as a prop to create your own artwork.
Yeah, right.
You have a job to do, and that's to sell that art. So you have to hold back on your creativity just a little bit, because it doesn't have to be like gray background, but you don't want to jazz it up too much, because you want me, the
Yeah, then it
juror-
becomes something else.
Right. You want me to look at the jewelry and not the photograph.
Right. So does anybody online have any questions for Dale?
If they're not muted.
Yeah, well, they can hear me, they just can't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If you have a question, unmute yourself and ask it.
Anybody else have any questions for Dale?
Sometimes when you're entering, you would read a history or a bio of the juror.
Yes.
Can people feed the kind of art you bring to make the juror happy?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I used to enter a lot of jury exhibitions. And I would be careful with that these days. I did it as a young artist to bolster my resume. I would at least have a long list of group shows that I was in. But yeah, I would look up who the juror was. And even before internet, I would look them up and see if they're in any art books at all. Now online, you could like Google my name, you'll find my website. Oh, he does this. We'll send him stuff that looks like that. Again, I'll point to that piece. That's probably the most surrealist piece in here. I've done a lot of surrealist stuff. I was kind of predisposed to like this. But I also try to keep enough psychological distance between myself and the artwork to where it doesn't have to be something that I specifically would have done or even would relate to. Because I look for novelty. And novelty is obviously something that I didn't think of or didn't do. A good juror will be able to step outside of themselves and judge the art for the art's sake. A bad juror is going to be influenced by their own artistic and intellectual baggage that is going to be a filter that everything goes through. And I try to eliminate that filter. But yeah, there were times in the past where oh, this person does black and white nude figures, so I'm going to send them black and white nude figures.
But you're not being honest with yourself as an artist if you're doing that. You know, I spent many years in the literary world trying to publish in literary magazines, and they would always tell you, read the journal before you submit, because you have to write to see what they like. There's a limit to that though, because you still have to do, you have to have your own voice, you have to have your own ideas, and you can only go so far with that.
Right.
Like, yeah, if you're gonna submit to a gallery, see what kind of stuff they like, and if it doesn't fit your work, then you're probably not gonna be in there.
Well,
But don't change your work for it.
never,
That's the
ever
point,
do work that you think others will like, because you will end up with a portfolio of pictures that they don't like and you won't either.
Right, and this comes to my other question, and then we'll break after that, but you had your list of the different kinds of artists and the progression. It seems to me that number 2,
The emulation phase.
people who sell a lot, who have big time careers, not even big time careers, but careers,
Yeah,
there's a lot of number 2s.
yeah, because they've hit it.
Because number 3, it's very difficult to sell that stuff.
That is a fraction of
Yeah.
a percent of
Exactly.
artists on earth.
Right,
The majority of them are in that emulation.
but
phase.
all the great artists are number 3.
Yes, yeah, your Picassos, your
Yeah.
Dalis, your Magrittes.
Yeah.
They're all in the
Right.
number 3 category.
But there's a lot of successful artists
But
who are
now,
number 2.
yes, and let's go ahead and flog him, okay?
Mhm.
Thomas Kincaid,
Yeah,
right? Thomas Kincaid spent his entire career in the emulation phase. But who did he emulate? At least he emulated himself. As far as I'm concerned, look at the guy's oeuvre over the years, he did one painting.
yeah.
And then he did it over and over and over.
Somebody
and
like
created a
DeGrazia
monument.
also did that too. So.
Yeah, yeah.
DeGrazia.
Well, and the thing is, everybody laughs about this. Yeah, I was on a panel, this is 1,000 years ago. I was on a panel at a science fiction convention. And I was on the panel, I was the lone surrealist artist on the panel with people who did book covers and magazine illustrations. Like, you know, and we've got an audience of like 100 kids that are basically doing fan art. You know, here's my portrait of Captain Kirk. And somehow the topic turned to Thomas Kincaid. And I got 100 kids out in the audience that are just beating the crap out of Thomas Kincaid. Not that he doesn't deserve it, but I finally had to say, look, stop it. Thomas Kincaid has at least achieved 2 things that everybody in the audience wants to have. 1, he's stinking rich. Nothing wrong with that. 2, he's famous outside the world of art. You know, think of all the artists you can that come to mind that are famous outside of art. Very small number. So he accomplished those things. Of course, the other side of the coin is he'll never be in the Louvre. He's one of the few artists that after he died, his work lost value. Because he flooded the market. He fudged his limited edition numbers, and he'd done a lot of things, and he didn't carry it.
He was safe. He was safe.
He was very,
Because
That's the great
understood.
point.
yeah,
Yeah.
And I find that Americans especially, I think that's what we're almost trained to want that from our creativity. say.
It goes back to the question I got from the ad agencies. What kind of a photographer are you?
Right, we wanna know, we wanna
Yeah.
be put into a category so we can market, it.
Well, but it also eliminates the necessity for thought.
yeah.
I don't have to think about what the guy does. Oh, it's Dale, he's a still life guy. We got a soup can. Call him up. Let's get that shot.
Yeah.
You know, and I've probably done like the worst thing an artist can do in his career, and that I have explored 1,000 different subjects and styles. You know, if the imaginary gallery called me up and said, we want to give you a show, I could literally ask the question, do you want abstract expressionism? Do you want impressionism? Do you want surrealism? Do you want documentary photography? Do you want black and white landscapes? I can do that. Of course, that means that in the market, I'm not really remembered for anything, but I am a specialist at the moment I do that exhibition. When I did the exhibition here last year, I was a specialist in Southwest landscape, Native American rock art. I couldn't imagine spending 50 years on that subject. I spent 5, 6, 7 years on the subject. I had a great time. I learned a lot. I probably did as much research that I would have a PhD if I'd have done it in an academic environment. But for me, I'm always interested in the next thing.
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of artists, that's where their best ideas come from and their downfall too, is like they just wanna finish something and then move on.
Yeah.
The next big thing,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and for marketing's sake and for selling sake, that's not the best thing. you
That's
can
not
do.
the best thing.
It's the same thing in writing. If you concentrate on one thing, you will publish all the time. But if you're a generalist, you will publish few and far between, you know.
Right, and whenever you change, you're gonna lose patrons, you're gonna
Yeah.
lose viewers, you know, it goes back to that old thing. Gee, Woody Allen, love your old funny movies.
Yeah, or like U2. Everybody loved U2, and then in the 90s, they changed into a different band, and some people went along with them, others didn't.
Exactly.
And artists, I say do that. I say go where your creativity takes you and don't think about anything else.
I agree with that completely.
But
Also, I have a question for a new artist.
Yeah,
Like our assignments is to do something different. So I do the assignment,
yeah.
move on.
Yeah, well, and that's a lot of what I did as a commercial photographer. You know, I had an assignment to shoot a thing. I learn about it, I shoot it. Hopefully I get a check, and then I move on to the next thing. And that's okay. If you do enough things, you will find the thing that makes you happiest, or the thing that you do best, or the thing that you enjoy most. And you will gravitate to making more of those. You still may make 10% of your other work, other different experimental things, but you'll gravitate towards the thing that you enjoy the most. Just be careful about doing the thing over and over and over that you first got rewarded for.
Yeah,
Because sometimes that's not the destination that you want to end up at.
So you're finding yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, I was just constantly finding myself.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, for me, Photoshop came along in 1990. I published my first computer generated picture in 1982. Yeah, yeah. And so when Photoshop came along, I was way ahead of the curve. But I think Photoshop for photographers ushered in what I will call the post-surrealist era, because it allowed me to combine photographs either by cutting and pasting or layering in ways that I could not do in the darkroom. The photographic technique actually limited me. And so I look at Photoshop as that demarcation between the classical surrealist era and the new post-surrealist era. And you know, you also remember Salvador Dali died in '89. Photoshop came out in '90. There you go. No art historian is going to ever ask me.
Dale, a lead in on that, and maybe this is another lecture, but you have Photoshop. So now you're a photographer using a camera to using a computer, which leads into the AI. And I would really love to have a discussion, and not here maybe, but how the art, you know, you're not you're manipulating the computer now, and so what if the computer manipulates it on its own, is it still ours?
Oh,
Right.
that is the question,
And that's,
that is the question of the moment.
yeah,
And what everybody's talking
A
about.
week ago, Ben,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
actually have, online, we have a thing that Ben McKee did a couple weeks ago about AI, and he addresses that very well. But that's a question also that they're gonna be debating for the next, 30 years.
AI is gonna change things in ways that we have not even foreseen.
Yeah.
There's a lot of AI in the latest version of Photoshop. If you look under sky replacement, it's freaking awesome. I've been playing around with AI online, and I played with, there's three types. There's text to image, there's text to text, and there's image to image. I haven't played with image to image. I don't have any experience with that, but text to image is amazing.
yeah.
I went to one of these AI sites, and you put in what they call prompts, like keywords. And so I put in Gothic, and I'm thinking, dark, I'm thinking Wednesday Addams, So I said,
Steampunk.
so I put, yeah, steampunk kind of goes in with Gothic. So I put in Gothic, and then I put in woman. And then I thought, let me put in something like really weird and specific, and so I added the word raccoon.
Oh, yeah, you talked about it.
And what I got was astonishing.
So if we go back to those, is it interesting, and then is it creative? At what point, and as an artist, do you feel that this is yours because you chose those words and you found the website? And
Right,
that's
I'm responsible for the content, the Gothic woman raccoon,
uh-huh.
I'm responsible for that. But for the look and feel of the final piece, the machine did that.
Yeah.
And we're at a point right now to where any artwork that's generated by an AI algorithm is considered public domain. It's made by a machine and it cannot be copyrighted.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
The idea can't. the
Yeah.
ideas can be done.
If you put those three words in again, if I did, she did, would it come up with the same picture?
No,
No.
no.
It isn't original.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
endlessly
it's,
variable.
but it's not my artistic original, it's my conceptual original.
Interesting.
But the app, I would not call AI art at this point. I would call it artistic
Well,
output.
They didn't used to accept our digital created art as an art piece.
Say again?
My created pieces on my computer, my art pieces on computer, there was real hesitation out there to consider that printout a piece of art in the beginning.
But no, but
The digital creation on the computer.
but you didn't use any AI for this.
No,
You just,
how AI is having the same problem being
Yeah.
recognized.
right, well,
Same.
well, first we had the problem with photography.
Yeah.
It's a reproducible medium. You have a negative, you can make as many originals as you want. We had that argument. Well, I think somebody's probably having it in a building down the road still. But then that same argument was applied when digital came along. Oh, well, you've got it encoded in ones and zeros. You can make as many originals as you want. But you're still pushing pixels. Everything that goes in is yours. And that means that everything that comes out is yours. Now with AI, what comes out is not necessarily yours. And what really blew my mind was the other day is, so what is the one thing that most artists really hate to do? Is it artist statements? How many of you had to write an artist statement?
Oh, I had to write a speech, just type in some, and all of a sudden, these are the points I need to make. It wrote me a beautiful speech. It's just.
I think they use most of the
poem.
prep, most press releases now are written. with
Yeah.
AI.
I did 4 artist statements
Uh-huh.
last week using AI,
Okay.
and they were all better than I could have written.
Yeah, it's really.
It's
But
really
it's gonna
scary.
save us so much time because we won't have to create art so much.
Well, people
Because
will lose jobs, copywriters, newspaper reporters are gonna lose jobs. Illustrators and commercial illustrators. I mean, AI is great if you have a deadline. And you just tell them a thing and you get an output, and then you email that on to your client and hope he approves it, and then you're done.
In the beginning, just doing ads, it was a man creating
Yeah.
a drawing,
Exactly.
and that's moved on, we've accepted.
everything
AI will get
changes.
accepted and something else.
But it is
It
an
will.
interesting conversation.
Well, I think the key part of it though, the key question is, Nobody else thought about putting in God, woman,
There you go.
raccoon.
Right,
That is something that only you did.
that's.
So
I'm-
that is a creative act, just as a drawing is a creative. act.
The concept,
Yeah,
but the graphical output. I can't paint like that,
no,
right? And so that's the machine. I mean, I have to give the machine
It's a
credit
different Kind of artist then.
for the what?
It's a different kind of artistry then.
It is, but, Bernadette and I were debating this last week, and this drove me crazy for literally 24 hours. I lost a night's sleep over this. But we were talking about, I'd just done my first AI experiments, and we were talking about artist reference. A lot of painters paint from photographs, right? They go out, they take a picture, they go out in their studio, they use that photo as a reference. Well, she stopped me. She goes, well, what if you went to an AI and you wanted to do a painting of a angry banana? And the AI generates that, and you use that. Yeah,
oh,
it was really good. And the AI generates that, and you use that as your reference. And so you take that angry banana AI output and you paint that. Well, it drove me crazy.
it's hard to
Finally-
see what the difference is between the photograph and that.
Well,
For me.
nothing. The next day, I finally came to the conclusion that the artist would be responsible for the concept of angry banana, and if you use that as reference and painted it, you put the paint on the canvas, and therefore you are responsible for the look and feel of the output. It's yours.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're painting it in some kind of individualistic style that you
In
have.
your style.
Yeah,
Yeah. We, again, like medicine, our medical technology is way in front of our medical ethics. I'm sure there's a guy in an illegal lab in China right now, cloning human beings.
building a person.
And we're not supposed to do that, but eventually this will all shake out, and it won't be the artists who get to decide what's what. It's going to be somebody in the marketplace that's going to decide it, like they decide everything. But just as soon as we get a grip on AI, something else is going to come over the horizon.
But you know what? AI can't do anything to your personal artistic vision and commitment. AI has no control over that whatsoever. And when you're thinking about your own personal artistic commitment, capitalism doesn't come into it, technology doesn't come into it. It's just you and your creativity. And that's the most important thing. And that's what every artist should concentrate on, in my opinion, and nothing else matters. With that, let's.
And I think we should end it with
Yeah.
that.
Okay, so thanks everybody for coming. As I said before, we're gonna take May off. We're gonna be closed for several weeks during May. Our budget is not what it should be, so we have to close down for a couple weeks. We will be open on the weekends, and we'll open back up in June with a great new exhibition from works on paper from a great artist in Italy and a great artist from Phoenix. That'll be one of our really great shows coming up June 6th. So, and then we'll have some talks associated with that show in June. So look for us then. And thanks everybody for coming out on a Wednesday night. We really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining us online.